I think we just met about a year and a half ago, right? It was like in December of 2018, I think, maybe November.
Yeah, I mean, that's when we became closer for sure. And, our hangs at the Golden Road started, stuff like that. And I started coming into the shop more. But I think I actually, I mean, I knew about you through Bob Reeves and all that back in the day. And I'm sure we have run across each other back then sometime, maybe even in passing. Definitely Carlos uh, when he was at the what was that, Can Brass or the
Right,
Brass Spa, or
right.
that whole setup.
So
Uh,
I think when Aaron and I first kind of re-met, if you will, again, um, when you came up to Stomp USA or something, I think for whatever reason, and it's not a bad reason, we were both kind of looking at each other like, I don't know about this guy, just from from a skeptical but good standpoint, so to speak. Um, and then as a little time went on, a very little time. Sorry, I'm getting a message saying our Facebook thing's not working, but I thought it was. Um, oh, here we go. I didn't push the last button. Sorry.
Technology, man.
Yeah. Add a title.
Yeah, the first time that I remember us sitting down at the table, we were talking about mouthpiece philosophy, and
Oh, right. It was at the Golden Road,
yeah, that's what I was saying. That's when the whole thing started. It started at
right?
with Javier, and I had been, it's hard to remember back then now, just off the top of my head, but somehow I was fooling around with mouthpieces, and we're always looking for something that just works, and you're not thinking about it for the gig. And Javier is a good buddy of mine. We've At that point we would have played several shows over at Dancing with the Stars together, and several other things. We go back to Cal Arts and all that. So I was just trying some of his equipment and vice versa, and we sitting there next to each other for a while. You get to talking about what everybody's playing and what you need to do and all that, right? So anyway, long story short, that's how we got connected. KO, as Javier brought me in on you know this connection, and was like, hey, let's go. We had a Golden Road hang. You know, it's a local
Right.
brewery.
Right. And then the first big project actually was brought in a lot of your skills. It's when Pacho was coming in and we were trying to introduce the 4-valve instruments. And we talked about it. And I said, hey, how'd you like to, write something and then record on it, play on it as well? And talk a little bit about that, because I remember boy, this is going to sound like we're trumpet players that hang all the time, but we were walking over to Dario's, the local Mexican place, to have some dinner and a drink or two when we were talking about it. And I said, hey, can you write a 5-piece fanfare kind of thing or whatever for 4-valve instruments? So chat about that a little bit, because that gets us into your composing and arranging as well.
Well, yeah, you just kind of sprung that on me when that whole thing happened, and it was a good idea, and it was really cool to meet Pacho as well. So the whole premise was, over dinner, he just told me I need a piece, let's do a fanfare and try to include all the trumpets, or as many relevant, you know, to get the point across. So it took a few days just to think about it, and Titan's Call was born. Just out of the name of the instruments, the brand that's there, and of course I had some to play, and that was part of this whole thing. Is just show up to Stomview USA. It's like a family over there. I just show up and text before I go and walk in and play whatever, and they let me take stuff with me to try and kind of muse on. So I knew what the instruments could do, and it was cool to learn them before Pacho got here too. By the way, so it was all a learning process to me too, and to write for it. You just really had to kind of wrap your head around what the instrument's sound and color and also range is. So I ended up writing a 5-part uh, fanfare for flugelhorn, all for the 4 valve line. And Pacho and Javier and I played, we tracked them and did some overdubbing there. And so it's for flugelhorn, B flat, C, E flat, and I believe Pacho, we played it on G, the high cornet in G. Uh, and so it's available that way. I also have the substitute parts, piccolo for people who don't have it, uh, and stuff like that. But it was really cool to hear the flugelhorn for me for the first time. You know, access the entire harmonic structure overtone series, and we finally have a bass. I mean, for the first time, a composer could write for the trumpet and write the entire overtone series, right? So I have a diatonic thing going from C down to what was formerly known as pedal C, right? That just, it felt really wonderful to be able to write that way, you know. And then in the B flat parts, you have Fs with a 1 and 4 combination, and etc. The G cornet, these high cornets, man, they sound really great. Anyway,
So we're going to talk about a lot of
yeah,
things. You're a very versatile guy, which I want to get into because you're not only a player, you know, a fine player who studied performance and being a trumpet player. That's really, I think, how you define yourself. But you have these other skills as composer, arranger that we touched on a little bit with Titan's Call. One of the things I'd like to ask you about, because we chatted about it once, is, as I recall, you started arranging and then ultimately composing, not necessarily out of need, but out of want when you were in school, right? Didn't you want some new arrangements or something?
oh sure,
So
yeah,
let's talk a little bit about that, because it's not like you went to school to be an arranger or a composer, but yet you've become an arranger and a composer. And I think that's kind of interesting.
sure. Well, it's certainly been a journey. I just see someone that joined in here, Mr. Mike Ward, there. Just want to say hello to him. Uh, he was my trumpet professor, trumpet teacher in high school, and actually got me hip to a lot of things here, including arranging. So somehow I got, I think it was through him, got hooked up with when I was still in my hometown as an early, you know, 15, 16, 17 before I split, went to Interlochen. Uh, but I would play taps for the local military and police people, and also got into playing echo taps and making some arrangements just to kind of switch it up. So it started there, playing Star Spangled Banner, making arrangements of that, and learning one of the first versions of the finale, you know, finale 2, whatever it was. But and then getting into college, or actually Interlochen, wrote my first concerto. We had to do that as part of school anyway, a movement of a concerto. But got into arranging for quintet music that I just wanted to play, and also in the technique that we wanted to play it. I remember in college, one of the first projects I did was a toccata and fugue, but not the typical Canadian brass style, right? Which was available and easily could go get it. Okay, but did my own, a la kind of the German brass trade-off version, and it came out really well. And that's my own arrangement. I can do whatever with it. But along the way, I've been learning these programs: Finale, Sibelius, you know, Logic, etc., to kind of get these thoughts on paper. And as it progressed, uh, it just kind of became sort of, you know, I have 4 quintets now. I have Titan's Call, a couple of different, the Ravel string quartet, a series of quartet books, a few different titles now under my company, Trumpet Smith Publishing. It kind of just blossomed into its own thing to add repertoire specifically to the brass community, although it did serve a different purpose for a few years when I was on cruise ships. like 60, 70 titles for guest entertainers there, but that's a whole different other thing, and had the same name, Trumpet Smith Publishing, and still worked. But the company was really created and geared towards, uh, you know, individual, unique music for brass and repertoire.
And so it speaks to, versatility, which I want to get to in a minute. But you went when you were in high school, you went to Interlochen. Had you already decided at that point that had you already lost your mind at that point and decided you wanted to be a professional trumpet player?
Yeah, it happened pretty early on, I think, and it was kind of thing where there was only one direction to go, and if I wasn't walking it, then who knows where I would have ended up, So it's like it was something I was obsessed with and just knew and was doing, and here we are.
And so, well, so here we are. But that's a big deal because at some point after you finished your studies, or maybe a little bit before you went to Cal Arts, you made the decision to come to Los Angeles. That's a big decision. And tell a little bit about how you approach coming into a new town where basically all the gigs are being satisfied by whoever's in the town, and you've got to somehow say, hey, look at me, could I do some gigs? Maybe I have something different to offer. But you don't want to step on toes. I mean, these are things that happen to somebody, whether they're trying to be a professional or move to a new city for a new job and trying to break into the weekend warrior side of things.
Sure. Well, that's a heavy question, Ko. A lot of good points. No, I mean, for me, moving here was just kind of almost fate. You know, uh, like I said, uh, this guy Mike Ward here taught me the routines of John Kleiman, who was a famous trumpeter, studio here in LA. Was principal for Fox. Hooked me up with someone named Joe LaRue. Came out here. This is when I was in high school. I come from Southern Georgia, so this is all kind of just happening the way it did. And then I went up to Interlochen and got introduced to what Eastman was, and got hooked up there, and met Jim Thompson, and then I decided to come here. It was between a decision between here and New York, really, coming from Rochester, New York. But there was something very provocative about LA, and I did it, and so moving here wasn't just about like coming here to break in and shake it up, like the intention wasn't anything aggressive, towards the people that are here. I mean, there's definitely a high respect and a high level of personal inner history, listening and knowing how kind of the situation and the scene works, and playing some of the routines of people. I knew who Bob Reeves was. I think Kleiman gave Reeves his first lathe, something like that. So there's a little history in that regard. So I came here just like in full respect and just try to enjoy what it is, just to figure it out. I learned very quickly, though, to be able to feed yourself if your primary job is to play music for a living. Uh, you have to be extremely versatile and really great the first time at all those things that you end up doing.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because you mentioned this when we've been hanging out. When different trumpet players, different trumpet careers, if you will. If you're a classical soloist, you have certain concerns and things to deal with. But if you're a freelancer like yourself, especially in a town like Los Angeles, and you get called to do a session at Warner Brothers, for example, you walk in the door. I've asked you sometimes, you say, oh, I got this gig at Warner Brothers. And I say, who's on the gig? And you go, I don't know. And I say, what part are you playing? And you say, I don't know. So talk a little bit about that and what it was like maybe the first time you did that. And is it different now?
Oh, well, sure, it's different now. Yeah. Um, the first time was on a film called Miracle at St. Anna's, a Spike Lee film at Sony, full orchestra. uh, and the trumpets were Malcolm McNabb on first, John Lewis on second, Barry Perkins on third, and me on fourth. I mean, it was nerve wracking just being on the lot. Like how where is the place? It's it's very far from the parking structure, and you can kind of get turned around, which I did. But you arrive super early and just get prepared. And so I get to the door, I find my way finally, and get to the front door, and I can finally see what's happening. I had no idea who's going to be in the room or what was going down. And it's they don't give you that much information. They just give you a service calls you or sends you an email, and they give you the date, the time, uh, and who the project is by, and what the title is, and that's it. For most occasions. So I walk in, I see all these people, legends, boom, right there, first gig. What? Knees are shaking a little bit, time stops right there, and then you realize that I have a job to do. They called me, I'm here, I gotta go, let me just find my seat, boom. Everybody was super cool, introduced themselves, and uh, pulled out my horn, and then Terrence Blanchard, and then warm up for a little bit, and very quietly, and in a practice mute or that kind of thing. Uh, Terrence Blanchard walks out from the booth, walks up to the podium. Good morning, everybody. We're ready to go. Okay, everybody kind of nods their head or whatever. 10 o'clock, by the way. This is like right on 10 o'clock, down like on the second. Boom, 10 o'clock. The lights go out. These red lights come in Sony. These red lights come on when you're recording. It's a little bit darker. It's a really great room to record in. And we took the first scene. That was it. That's how it went. The music is on the stand when you get there sometimes, or they bring it out as they go along. But most of the time, it's a stack of music. And you're allotted a certain amount of time for the day, and you got to do it.
So do you feel being a composer and arranger and understanding uh, things like Pro Tools and all, how the recording process is going ahead of time, did that help you at all? Does that help you when you walk into a session nowadays? In other words, talk about your feelings about, what is a player in any genre of trumpet, does it help them to learn these technologies? Is it a waste of time unless they're going to write? I mean, just talk a little bit about that.
Uh, Definitely is a benefit to learn all the technologies that you can that are applicable to your job. You know, uh, it's kind of like if you're playing in a band, understanding what each instrument does and what their role is in the band, that kind of thing. So it helps you understand what you're doing to understand everything else. I would say that's kind of the equivalent to learning these technologies. And in some cases, it definitely helps you create your own, your own music, your own art, or even communicate. We're on technology right now doing this. Not too long ago, I just made a video with a few trumpet player colleagues in town of a string quartet. You know, using separate
That's
cameras and microphones and all kinds of things.
that's
I
the
was,
one you just did, that Mendelssohn, right?
yeah, the Mendelssohn String Quartet with Ryan Dark, principal trumpet of the LA Opera, Jonah Levy's freelance here, and Dan Rosenboom, uh, studio player in town. And yeah, we did that on our own setups at our own houses. I made a click track for them, uh, and sent it that way, and played as organically as possible, and they recorded to my track. We weren't in the same room. We didn't, they just had to send me their recordings. I described how to put the microphone, how to set it up. So yeah, it's good to know that kind of stuff. End of the day, a video came out of it. I learned some Final Cut KO. I finally got it.
I saw you did a good job.
Stepped up. I stepped up. Yeah.
But it's I think that stuff is important. And you mentioned when you got together with your friend and you went over the climbing routines and all that stuff early on. But I believe that a big influence on your playing as your trumpet playing was when you studied from Jim Thompson at Eastman School of Music. Um, could you tell us a little bit about how that helped and helps your playing, and a little bit about that school? Because I think a lot of people, they get the Buzzing Basics books or whatever, but they don't have the opportunity to study from a guy like that one on one, where you certainly did.
Sure. Yeah. Spent 4 years with Jim uh, over at Eastman, and it was really really great. Definitely learned a lot, and for him. I think it's a little bit deeper than just trumpet as well. Uh, but his whole concept is such that you find the center, you find balance, and can find the flow, present time, to be in the moment. Uh, and so combining that with, kind of the strict regimen of, well, he had us on buzzing basics for sure. We also did cornet studies and French studies, Charlier, things like this to kind of hone in on accuracy. And I was still doing my other things as well. I would be doing stamps and climbing, Clark, all sorts of things that I was kind of addicted to practicing back in the day. But uh, it, I think with Jim's teachings came a certain lyricism, kind of a singing in the sound, a kind of like spin and flow, and a certain control, and how to put energy in certain parts of your sound. How to activate that way without straining. I mean, his whole thing is being as relaxed as possible when you're playing, to let the air do the work for you. Uh, to use one embouchure, that kind of thing, to not move around too much, use too much pressure, that kind of thing, but just to blow and and blow through the bricks and that kind of thing.
Was he is he a teacher that demonstrates in the lesson, or was it mostly he talked to you about it and give you vocal cues?
A little of both. Yeah, he would play. He would play, especially when he was happy to play. When he liked what he heard. This okay. This is like one of those funny things. I don't know if he still does it, but so like let's say you're auditioning, right? Audition week, and if he likes you, he'll play duets with you. So like you get to experience the whole shebang, the whole experience there, if he's really in the mood, if he's really like feeling it. And so that was cool. Yeah. So we definitely heard him play, and he could play, you know, and and a lot of times we would play together. We would, be playing duets, and that was one of my favorite things to do. Actually, was to, you know, just kind of play one on one.
So that's like being a comedian and going on the Johnny Carson show. If he asks you over to the desk, you did well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so when in the uh, in the Mendelssohn piece that you just put up recently, a couple days ago, I think
Yeah.
you mentioned I forget if it was in the video intro or in the notes, that you actually channeled Jim Thompson a little bit. Tell us,
Yeah.
tell me what that means.
Well, kind of what I was saying with the spin and the sound. So first of all, a little backstory. The first time I heard the Mendelssohn String Quartet uh, performed by brass players was, I guess, the only time too. Maybe not the only time. No, definitely not the only time. But was with Eastman Brass, and Jim was playing the first part. Doug Prosser playing the second part, and it's a really great recording. If you haven't heard it, it's on Calls and Echoes uh, from the early 2000s. I'm not sure where it's for sale, but hopefully it still is. So anyway, I wore that recording out. I also heard them play it live, and a few of us, including my buddy Dan, who's on the recording, who was at Eastman at the time, we had separate groups. He played it uh, with one of his groups, and then I invited him on my senior recital to play the Mendelssohn String Quartet in its entirety, not just the third movement, but the whole thing, as part of my grad recital, undergrad recital. And so yeah, we all kind of had a history with it. So I channeled him in that way of just kind of being in that mindset, but also like the reason we fell in love with it, and all of us did really, was because of his sound and lyricism on it, and the way that he was able to spin his sound, and the kind of tone he was able to get uh, throughout it. And not just him, but the entire group for sure, right? Prosser has some really great moments too, you know. But you know, he knew how to milk a portamento. His sound between the notes, especially playing string music, just had so much energy and life and spin to it. And so I tried to get some of that, you know, especially in the first phrase of, if you listen to the video there, in the first phrase, da 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 dee da be ya da, so be ya da. Tried to really get the portamento in that and let the air continue to move through, and just go beyond the thinking of a trumpet player, you know.
Right. So
And
do you feel it's important to be a serious player, to be able to and to work on singing parts like you just did?
uh, sure, yeah. I mean, singing can definitely help. Training your ears can help. Ear training, writing, you know. Yeah. I mean, sure. The more you can do, the more you're going to be able to do. You know, the more that you expand yourself, uh, I would say, or at least try.
Okay. And recently you were doing a bunch of sit downs runs of musicals in town. Um, and it's a lot of playing. What was it, 8 shows a week?
Sure. Yeah.
Did you how did you treat your life any differently? Do you treat your life differently if you've got a steady like that versus, in other words, how do you stay ready for that studio session that could happen at any minute and you know what you're going to do, but at the same time you've got this steady gig? You know, it's kind of a balance thing that not, you know, not every trumpet player's been able to do all those kinds of things. And so it's nice to hear from someone who's not only been able to, but does those things on a regular basis. And of course, we're all hoping regular basis starts up again soon, but that's for a different pod
Yeah.
or a different Zoom call,
I was just about to say, you know, it seems like so long ago, the pre-COVID days.
right?
I almost don't remember what it's like to do these things. I mean, that was literally the last gig, the last downbeat for one of these musicals was March 8th. I don't know what month it is now. It's probably June, right?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
June.
yeah, so that's pretty intense, you know. Uh, so I hope we get back to it at some point soon, but I doubt it. Anyway, uh, but those were great times, and have been very fortunate to just play a string of shows at the Pantages and the Dolby theaters for a little while now, uh, and it can be strenuous, sure, uh, especially trying to maintain. I think your question pertained to also being ready for any session work or any other kind of work that came up during the day, and it did. Sometimes cut it close. You know, had a double at Warner Brothers and went across the hill there and got down to Pantages right in enough time. You know, that kind of thing. Um, how? You know, I think it's all about balance and just keeping up with your priorities of what ultimately you might be asked to do. And we get asked to do some really ridiculous things around here. I don't, yeah, just like it's normal and we can just pull it out. But no, I mean it takes just like practicing and preparing for what the impossible a little bit every day, you know. So the shows like when you're playing every day, performing every night for a show or two on the weekend or whatever, there's a certain amount of time that's allotted to just that. I mean, that takes energy to do depending on what part you're playing. And so, I mean, you definitely have to be, and that's live, you know, and nobody cares how you're feeling, you know. I mean, after the show, people care, you know, but yeah, you just have to be ready for that and be able to allot the amount of energy you need for that. And if you're beat up that night and you have something the next morning, then you have to just prepare yourself to do that. Hydrate, warm down, you know, fix yourself up. Everybody has their own way of doing that.
So
And
you mentioned that they ask you to do some silly things around here. One, it'd be nice to have an example of one of those silly things if you're willing to share. And two, I'm going to make the assumption, but you tell us, for the most part, do you enjoy the work that you do?
yeah, I'll start with that. Sure, I definitely enjoy it. Uh, it's really great to live this kind of life. If it's not easy to be able to get to a place to enjoying it though, uh, it can be a very competitive place. I think that's how we started out with this conversation here. You know, and there are several people that are really great at what they do here. You know, who are all out there, and everybody's trying to work. You know, and it's really amazing to be able to know them and hear them and be around that, you know, and still be able to eat myself.
Do you prefer playing live or in the studio?
That's tough, man. I don't know. It every day is different here. You know, what do I prefer? I think it depends on the day and the show and the gig and yeah.
Okay, well, I got more questions, but why don't we open it up to anyone out there? If you have any questions, you can either unmute and ask them, or if you want to send them in chat, uh, I can read them, whatever you guys think. I see we got Gary Bass is here, and I see Javier's here, or at least Javier's picture's here.
Yeah, I see his
Uh,
picture. What's up?
yeah,
Javier's picture.
so here's Javier saying hi there. You can talk a little bit more. It doesn't hurt my feelings about what you feel. Here's a good one from my standpoint. What do you feel the potential in the future is of all the four valve instruments that we at Stomvy are making, for example?
Yeah, I think they're really great instruments. Uh, and I think the potential was one that was sought by people like Mahler and Strauss, and uh, you know, like Mahler's Fifth has that at the end of the solo. Da-da-da, ba, 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 right? Yeah, nobody plays that. Can't play it. Well, you can play it on this, right?
Right?
I think it's a big deal to have an instrument, and all instruments in the trumpet family have access to the overtone series. I mean, I think it's that simple, and I think all other brass instruments had that forever. You know, and since the invention of valves, right? Um, so to be able to access that is really cool, and not just on the small piccolo trumpets, but on the larger trumpets as well.
Okay, a couple of guys here are asking me, would you explain what you mean by access to the full harmonic series?
Sure. Well, all right. So if we all understand the overtone series, right? There's a fundamental which we call our pedal C. There's the octave above that, which is what we call C, right? There is then the fifth, and then the fourth, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the seventh, and it's the whole overtone series, right? And then we have our valves that link every one of those, right? Well, on every other brass instrument, they can connect from, and this is where our instruments stop. Let's say trumpet, we stop at F sharp. There's no F, E, E flat, D, D flat, or, but then you can play the C, right? We just kind of lost that range. Uh, but the pedal C is still the fundamental. Pedal C is the fundamental, and all instruments have that, and they can access all notes down to that. So for the first time, at least in my book, I know there are some instruments that have existed that are specialty instruments and etc. But to create a full line of trumpets that can, you know, play from pedal C diatonically or chromatically, the fundamental all the way up. That's what I mean, right? There's no more pedal tones on these. They're notes. Uh, and so we just have to change our thinking of that. Composers wrote for that. I mean, Strauss was a big one. Heldenleben, E flat parts. You know, they weren't playing that on B flat trumpet. It's very. They wrote for different instruments. They had an F trumpet then, and after the F trumpet came the B flat trumpet, but the B flat trumpet didn't have the same range, right? So these are that missing link to that, in my mind.
Okay, so I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I mean,
Well, I was going to say in preparation for Zooming with you today, one of the things I did was I watched a bunch of different interviews of musicians, everything from interview with Bud Herseth to Paul McCartney. And so my next question would be, what's it like not being a Beatle? Oh no, wait, that was Paul McCartney. No, it was very interesting. What inspires you to write? Like when we sort of commissioned you to do Titan's Call, you just wake up and you have a moment, or does just a moment happen, or do you say, "Oh, I got to write something now," and you just sit down and start writing things, or
sometimes I,
do you write with the piano? Do you write with the trumpet? Do you write just on Sibelius? How does that work?
yeah. So I mean, with Titan's Call, in particular, uh, I think I knew we wanted something exciting from the time that we talked about it, right, at Dario's, to the time that it was a few days until the idea came to me. I just had to really think about the topic of the conversation. We wanted something that was going to highlight this brand new line of instruments. So I was thinking something exciting, something that would be impactful, but not too involved, in terms of being long or overly complicated. Something that was right to the point and highlighted the sound, the boldness of the sound quality, and and the range, really. Uh, so then once that like settled, it just the first few notes came right.
That's exactly
Uh,
that's exactly what Paul McCartney said, really.
oh yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So here's a question from James, and I'm going to embellish on it a little bit. Um, in Los Angeles, if you get called for a recording session, there are certain things that are assumed. It assumes you're going to be there on time. It assumes uh, that there's no question that you're able to sight read and able to sight read basically perfectly the first time. When they call you, they don't ask, "Hey, do you know how to read music?" That's assumed. So James is asking, if you have any advice or tips for someone trying to really get their reading chops together.
Yeah, pull out the metronome, play through the Arbenz book. You know, I would say read, play through all the Charlier. But when you're first starting out, uh, don't rush through it either. Really take your time. Really train your eyes to see and lock on to every note that you see in exact coordination with the metronome. It's imperative to use a metronome. Don't do it without a metronome. 99%, I should just say 100% of all recording sessions use click, you know, unless it's a pop or big band, or even then, you know, like click track is very important to this whole operation with session work. So being exactly with the click and on time, but still be able to access your technique in that real time it takes to, you know, interpret it. So that's really what you're working on, is how to get from your eyes to your, you know, your sound. So start slowly, you know, quarter note 60, 50. I'm a big fan of 50 these days, you know.
So, even as an advanced player, you still practice with a metronome.
Yeah. Oh man. Sure.
So, how important then to you, and this will dovetail into a question here that Chris asked. So, how important to you are fundamentals, and specifically, Chris is saying in Jim's buzzing book, it says the first 1 through 4 exercises are supposed to be played for a specific amount of weeks. Is there a specific end result that you should achieve before you move on to exercises 5 through 8? I don't know if you remember that book well enough.
Oh, I mean, I still do buzzing basics every once in a while. I did some today or yesterday. Uh, you know, it's all a tool. You can just pick out the right one. I'm not familiar though with a set amount of time for doing anything. It. One of his Jim's biggest sayings was, "It takes as long as it takes." So I don't know about a set amount of time in any direction. I think it's going to be what it is as it's happening. At least that's my understanding of it. But you know, this comes back again to making sure it's all in the right place and settled and becomes habit before you move on. I mean, the concept was is don't rush into something new. We're adding or replacing habits, really, right? Uh, so in regards to that specific question to buzzing and that question of, you know, moving forward, I would say that's really the answer is, uh, you know, making sure that you have built the right habits, especially 1 through 4. Yeah, 1 through 4 he considers, you know, kind of the butter middle range of the horn, for especially for orchestral playing. Now, this is designed from an orchestral player's standpoint. Jim was principal trumpet for Atlanta and Montreal symphonies, right? And his playing styles are to that. We have many different playing styles out here, so these things can shift depending on that interpretation as well. But but the concepts specific to buzzing basics, that's his belief of the middle register. So, and so if you get that, that's 90% of your playing, right? So you
So,
really,
getting the question that's further on that. So, getting that before you'd move on is having a full resonant sound on those 1 through 4.
right. So finding the center. So that's what one is all about, right? Not to be too high or too low, but right in the sweet spot. And 2 and 3 are more about finding and connecting between the notes, both ascending and descending. Okay, and so you have to, depending on which one it is, blow through the note until the next one pops out, so that you're not telegraphing. Ta-yi, right? To. It's using the uh, natural resistance of the overtone series, right? It's very important to know about the overtone series, by the way, if you play the trumpet or any brass instrument, you know. And each partial, which is the series again, has a break to it. A lot of people telegraph this break and change their airstream slightly, going up or down. Ta yi or ta. So when you're descending, it's kind of the same thing, blowing through the note, but first you let it dip just ever so slightly so it moves, and then you blow straight through, uh, uh, controlling its rate of descent until it naturally locks into the next partial below that at the top of the partial, not the bottom. And the same thing for when you're ascending. So that's what 2 and 3 are all about. 4 is taking you down uh, to the F sharp, but now sustaining each notes, right? So uh, he's really trying to get you to understand this one embouchure approach, you know, and how to play between the notes and to let the air speak for itself, and all of that as easily as possible. And if you can't do it easy, then you're not moving on. I don't care how long you've been doing it. you
So
know,
it's being easy. It's not telegraphing the move and having a good resonant sound in the center. Is that kind of the three things before you would move on?
right? The sound is activating itself. Like when you're playing in the center of the horn is going to start vibrating in the pitch kind of you're playing and stuff like that. Those are the kind of feels that you need to get, right? And the telegraphing is another big one. You know, if you're shifting your embouchure too much, a lot of this is about seeing your embouchure move. A lot of people, or, you know, we know what we're talking about here. Uh, that's really not a necessary action, so it's about finding how the air really moves. And keeping the air moving forward at all times. It's a very horizontal kind of thing, too. So I would say that's what 1 through 4 is kind of all about, and the rest of the book too, just in different ranges. But it's imperative that you change. Like if you're not accustomed to playing that way, right? Uh, then it may be easier to continue on with bad habits, right? So I think that timeline that what was his name, Chris, I think, um, mentioned about the first 4 is really so that you get settled on the new habit and in your mind. So when you pick up and play that G, you know, that first note, number 1, it's in the center of the sound. You know how that feels, and it becomes a resonant feeling, and that to be carried all the way through. Um, and this is all about getting as much resonance in your sound with the little amount of effort as possible, which takes a lot of prep, right? Um,
So question here. So anybody who's played a gig with you or heard you on some of the online stuff knows what I know. There's no question you can play the trumpet. And more importantly than that, you make really, really good music. So the question is, was it easy for you? Are you the guy that did it naturally? Are you the guy that walked into James Thompson at an advanced level and he's had you do 1 to 4 and you did them the first time, he said, all right, let's move on? Or did you have to work at it? In other words, if someone's out there who is struggling, do they have a chance?
oh, sure, they definitely have a chance. I mean, no, it was definitely not easy for me. It's not easy now. You know, it's easier having a little more information under my belt here, but no, I had to work at it. I mean, I practiced my butt off, man. I practiced a lot every day. I was waking up at like 5:30, 5 in the morning to practice before whatever I had to do. You know, take a sandwich for lunch and practice for whatever lunch was wherever I was. You know, it was all about I guess understanding how to really maximize that practice, you know, and that's what that time with Jim really did for me. It was maximizing the approach, you know, in kind of a Zen way. Uh, and now it's just efficient. Like, practicing these days, it's just what am I getting to? Where am I maneuvering? I mean, especially when we were playing every day, right? Because you're within the time frame of whatever your job is, right? So that sets the style you're playing. So that then you determine what else you need to play, right? Just in case, and to keep the balance, and that's kind of the constant mindset is whatever I'm doing, I'm going to do the opposite, you know. So it kind of balances out whenever the time is right.
Okay, do you feel, a couple people have asked me this, do you feel it's necessary to practice every day? Or are there benefits in taking time off, or what's your opinion on that?
Uh, yes and yes. You know, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. It's all about your personal experience and what you need in your life and the kind of balance you're trying to bring to that. You know, I if you're playing every day, maybe you don't have to play every day. You know, uh, because you're at work, right? But I would definitely say there are benefits to training your your body, your mind, your whole existence into doing what you need to do. Uh, uh, if you feel burned out from that experience, then yeah, break time is necessary. You know, so I think all parts of the spectrum exist, and I think they're all necessary. I told this story the other day. It was about Jens Lindemann, man, and somebody actually asked me this. I forget who, but he came in to a master class at Eastman back in the day, 15 years ago or whatever, and just flown in from Japan or something, some random place, and had been traveling for 3 days. We didn't know any of this, right? The class was about to start, and he walks in, Canadian brass style, but playing "Girl with the Flaxen Hair" on piccolo, right? And walks in, walks around the back, and then walks to the front. As he finishes the solo, somehow he miraculously timed all that, and miraculously there was room for him to actually do that. Maybe some of this was staged, who knows? But but at the end of playing that, it was the most beautiful thing you ever heard. I mean, he has really exceptional piccolo playing already, but that was just really cool. And then he said he hadn't played for 3 days or 4 days. He was traveling, hadn't slept in a day and a half, and his message was you don't have to play every day. You have to be ready, right? But I think there's a certain tier, right, that you get to in your own mindset and preparation. Like I guarantee before that, in college and except before that, and even as he prepped for his competitions, I mean, there's some intense prep time too, I know that when I play contemporary music concerts, again, this is all back in the days before COVID, BC. Uh, but back when I would play even contemporary music concerts, it takes time to one set the fundamentals right, two understand the extended technique to play, three to get your mind prepared, right, to be calm and centered the entire way. Uh, and just be able to do it. It takes a lot of prep sometimes to be able to pull something like that off. That's a different end of the spectrum than studio playing and these musicals and stuff. Uh, Playing avant-garde music can be stressful at times too. So I think there's room for everything. It takes a level of preparation to achieve certain things, and everybody needs a vacation every once in a while too. So
Cool. So we're near the end of our thing here, and before I ask you the final question, which thankfully someone else has asked as well, um, want to thank you for being here.
Hey, man.
And I want everyone to know that they should definitely check out trumpetsmith.com if you're looking for some cool, interesting arrangements and stuff. Check out Aaron there. Also, I believe you do Zoom lessons. Are you teaching lessons now? If
Yep.
someone were interested, they can
Yep.
contact you through Trumpetsmith, right?
Right. Or trumpetsmith@gmail.com.
Okay. All right. So if you guys are interested in that, certainly do that. Um, so the final question, which I like to ask is, what's the most memorable, funniest, weirdest, or any gig or trumpet related story that you're willing to share with us?
Weirdest, freakiest one. Well, gotta think of something that's beneficial for everyone here. Well, I'll tell you one of the funniest moments was for me, and I couldn't believe it was happening, and I was the one that was asked to record it. So there's a video somewhere on Facebook of this, but we're at a session at Warner Brothers for I can't remember which one now. Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, one of these live TV things, and so it's Wayne Bergeron, Barry Perkins, and me, and we wrap the session. And Wayne wants to show me this. I had just shown him probably one of these 4-valve C trumpets or something, and the day before. And the next day he was like, "I'm gonna bring something to show you." And Wayne's kind of he's funny, man, and he's a character, man. So he brings out this piccolo trumpet. I mean, it's like painted and there's latex or something on it. This is not like a trumpet. It's a metal contraption, right? And I played it and immediately was like, no, just gave it right back to him, right? And or tried to play it, and so he told me to get out my phone and to start recording. Had no idea. We had just finished playing our final notes. He pulled this thing out to show me. Okay, we're at work, man. So did not expect this to happen, and so I start recording him, and he makes this whole story, calls the piccolo trumpet this Vindaloo 500 trumpet, and says the bell might be bent, and starts banging the trumpet on the ground to fix the bell. And again, we're still sitting in our chairs, right? And people are packing up their instruments. So he bangs it on the ground. Sounds like a hammer. He looks over to Barry, gets Barry involved with this video, and hands Barry the trumpet, but it falls to the ground. And then the music supervisor comes over, picks it up, hands it back, but Wayne just lets it fall again. Right now, valve caps are coming off this thing. It's really a sight. The contractor comes over, and somebody else comes over. Actually, Rob Scher comes over, and tells someone to throw him the horn, and they toss Rob the horn, who he purposefully lets it fall to the ground. Right. At this point, I'm just dying on the inside, and it continues on. They bring the horn all the way back, and it dies a painful death right in front of our stand there. And for me, it just going from being super nervous, if we're bringing this now full circle, from my first really kind of studio situation or any kind of real big time gig or gig in general, of kind of being nervous and uh, just not sure what's going to happen, uh, and that kind of energy, to this kind of goofing around, but getting a very high level of output. Nobody was fired from this incident, right? And, I think Wayne could get away with it, but everybody plays great, and you can just kind of have fun at work. And I never thought I'd see something like that. you know, it, I'll see if I can find this video, man. But yeah, it's a really fun watch if you can see it.
Okay, well, we're gonna wrap it up again. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Aaron, thanks for being here. More soon, I hope.
Cool.
And everyone have a great rest of your day. And that's it for now. Ciao, everybody.